African Dialogue, looking at different events in depth, discussing a variety of issues.
What we see here is a clear violation of, one, the rights to privacy of Tiwonge and Stephen.
The position of Greenpeace is that it's been a disappointing meeting.
Yes, you are listening to Channel Africa, where you get news from an African viewpoint or perspective. Thank you for joining us here on African Dialogue. This is where we diagnose some of the big subject matters on the continent. But this is a special day for us because we are starting our series today of artificial intelligence on the African continent. And we actually have a poll that we've put up on our Channel Africa Twitter handle. Go to our Twitter handle. It's at Channel Africa 1. It's the numeric 1 at the end. Let's fast track this particular poll during the program because I think it will inform the discussion. Your voice is always something that will change the conversation because we're not really prepped or that well managed in this particular conversation. It's a free flowing one. So go to our Channel Africa Twitter handle at Channel Africa 1. There's a poll question there and it says, is there a future for artificial intelligence or AI for the African continent? Is there a future for the artificial intelligence space or AI for the African continent? We just put it on 30 minutes ago, so let's fast track it and give us your thoughts on that particular space. We have 3 categories of answers there. It is yes, it is needed, no, it's a danger, and maybe if we do it right. So do participate in that poll question on our Twitter handle at Channel Africa 1. Well, we're living at a time, definitely, when with just one click, you'll be able to get an answer of a complicated mathematical equation. All you have to do is to go to Google to find a recipe. You can instruct Siri or Alexa to change your television channel. Self-driving cars are becoming the new flashy innovations in the motor industry. This is all about artificial intelligence. But how does it look on the African continent? And is there a future for it here in Africa? To assist us on this, we're joined by Dr. Jacques Ludik, who is the CEO of cortexgroup and the author of the book Democratizing Artificial Intelligence to Benefit Everyone. I'm also joined by Sean Kruger, who's a technology and innovation specialist. And finally, but not least, Mishandren Naidu is joining us. He is the Nexus legal analyst and also a content editor. Let me start with you, Dr. Ludik. Thank you for giving us your time.
Good morning. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure joining, and it's a pleasure also meeting Sean and Mishandren as well.
Sure.
Looking forward to our discussion here. An important topic.
Fantastic. Now let's break it down of what AI is, what is artificial intelligence, because we can conflate it at times. It means so many things for different people. But generally, what are we talking about, Dr. Ludik?
Yeah, I actually, as you've mentioned, I actually unpacked that quite a bit in my book, Democratizing AI to Benefit Everyone. I think it's important that people understand what it is and what does it mean. Just to briefly unpack it, there's many definitions, and I'll go through a few of them just to make it really simple. First of all, I think it's the capacity of a machine to reason. So there's reasoning, similar to what humans are doing. There's the capacity to perceive information on data or data. You can perceive it. So like we can see things, we can hear things. You see the same kind of thing with machines. You can solve problems, you can optimize things, you can prioritize, you can solve problems. So that is all part of it. So in a nutshell, it is like the cognitive processes of machines. So that means that it's got the ability to learn, to recognize, to analyze, to make decisions. And if you think about intelligent agents, so obviously you can have intelligence embodied in various things. If you say it's an agent in a game or a robot and so forth, then you can say that machine, AI has been exhibited by that kind of machine that perceives the environment. So it needs to perceive, understand that environment, and it needs to then to take actions. And then you can say how does it take actions? It actually tries to maximize the chance to achieve its goals. So it needs to. So typically in that scenario, you have goals and so forth. So it's the ability of a computer to perform these kind of tasks. It could do, say, deductions or learning and so forth.
Yeah, let me come to you, Mashendran Naidu, because it's just to sum up what Dr. Ludik is saying, it's basically giving a computer or a software a brain to actually collect information and make sense of it. Do you want to elaborate for our listeners? Because I think it's important for us to expand on what artificial intelligence is. I know that Dr. Jacques Ludik's response was very comprehensive.
Yes. So his response is very comprehensive, and it is correct. So I'll just elucidate a little bit more on this. But firstly, thank you so much for having me on, and morning to you and your listeners. Okay, so just to add a little bit on to what Dr. Jacques said. So broadly, there are two different types of AI. So you have what is known as a locked AI system, which is basically your more simple AI system, like your decision tree AI system. So you ask it for an answer, it gives you an answer. That's basically what those are. And then you get an unlocked system. So basically, with an unlocked system, the machine has the learning ability which allows it to change its initial programmed parameters. It essentially basically programs itself as it learns, so it develops as it learns. So the outcome when you're looking at like an unlocked algorithm isn't really predictable. So I'll just speak a little bit about how machines learn and about artificial neural networks as well. So machines learn generally through machine learning. It's basically a data analytics technique that teaches computers to do what naturally comes to humans and animals. So they learn from experience. So they use these machine learning algorithms and computational methods to basically subtract or to take information out of data, patterns, etc., which it then uses to improve the performance. So as you know, now there's a huge rise in big data. Everything is about big data. You see it in all the policies and everything about that. So really, with the fact that we have so much big data now, it's really empowering us to use these machines in so many different domains and for so many different functions. You see it in the workplace now. You see it in technology. You see it everywhere. So a lot of machines use what's called an artificial neural network. So these are basically just machine architecture that mimics the human brain and how the human brain basically thinks. Yes?
Yeah, carry on. I'm listening to you, Mashendran.
Okay, sorry about that. So these artificial neural networks, they basically are based in the hardware system, which is the computer, and they are a special category of machine learning. So basically, they are capable of learning and making decisions, and as I mentioned, they mimic the way the human brain processes and generates information. So how it's done in the human brain is that we have billions and billions of neurons, which are your brain cells, and they communicate amongst each other through a process known as neurotransmission. So this is basically where they send signals in amongst themselves that allows them to perceive the environment around them and also store information. So they're able to communicate, store information, and perceive. And that's exactly how an artificial neural network works as well. But in an artificial neural network, these neurons are replaced with what's called a weighted node that are organized in different layers. So usually there's 3-4 layers. And these nodes communicate with each other, usually through forward propagation, meaning that the communication goes forward through the different layers. But you can also have a backward propagation. So that's basically where the machine itself recognizes that there was an error, and it can go backward and correct that error, learn from that, and then move forward again. So really, artificial neural networks just mimic the cortical loop of the brain. So that's basically where our brain is able to generate new ideas, number one, and number two, identify that these ideas are actually valuable.
Let's bring in Sean Kruger, a technology and innovation specialist, also part of our program. I think both the gents, Dr. Ludik and Mashendran, were very much spot on in terms of letting us understand how it looks from a technical perspective, Sean. But practically, how does this affect us in a modern world?
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Did you want to quickly answer?
Sean, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just go ahead.
Okay. So
I just wanted to elaborate.
Dr. Ludik, let's just give Sean a chance and then we'll come back to you.
Well, yeah, go for it.
Sure.
Go for it.
Okay. So it's quite interesting. We've now mentioned, how intelligent these systems are, but it's on an everyday thing. Think about when you open up your phone or open up your email, when you do predictive texting, when, like you've mentioned, you say to Siri something. That is where people are starting to see and engage with artificial intelligence. But in our everyday things, nowadays call center agents are being replaced with artificial intelligence, where we ask a question, we speak to someone, and we're not even actually speaking to a human being, we're actually speaking to a system. And then like my colleagues have mentioned, when you ask a question and can't answer, that's only when you actually get to an actual person. So on a level of where we can understand it is, it simulates human intelligence of, hi, how are you, what are you doing, and we engage in these chatbots. And what we're seeing nowadays is we're engaging with it more and more without us even knowing about it.
So practically, in terms of maybe let's speak about a search engine or maybe a music app, for example, or even what we're seeing on television in terms of how information is always collated, whether you're searching things on YouTube or on your music app, everything is actually creating information for that particular technology, Sean. Let's make our listeners understand that concept of things.
All right. So what you're referring to there is basically it's customizing content.
Okay.
And what that's done, and Ms. Schneider touched on this, is its usage of big data. Now, I don't know if you remember back in the day, a good old Excel spreadsheet with, numbers in that. But what big data allowed AI to do is, okay, you now have image recognition, video processing, content, and metadata, which leads me to now my answer in the sense of when you log into YouTube, you like pictures of cats. Fantastic. That's what kind of content it provides to you. But in the sense of it's certainly limited of how it cannot generally necessarily at this point in time make that content. So what it can do is it can analyze you as a user and see your genres, your likes, and your searches, and compile that kind of information, especially using metadata tags, bringing in that intelligent aspect of making a decision to what you like. Key to that is learning from past experiences. So if you like to watch horror movies or you enjoy the latest music by certain artists or these kind of specific kind of content with metadata tags, it can start to make the content relevant for you as a user across platforms. And that is what makes it so powerful in the sense of you can customize your own experience through a digital platform.
Okay, let's bring back Dr. Jacques Ludik because you wanted to comment to some of the sentiments that were made by Mishandran. Go ahead, Dr. Ludik.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear everything. It's a bit soft, Johnson, but I got the gist of what he was saying. I think if you think about applications, you talk about the practical things. And I also want to quickly go back to AI and some of the things Sean also mentioned. I think we're talking about a huge smart technology toolbox, and I will quickly elaborate what is all the tools in that toolbox. So I think you talked about a few of those tools, but I'll give a bit of a perspective on that as well. Before just in terms of practical things, I think as we instrument the world, what we basically see massive applications in consumer-facing businesses where everything is becoming personalized, ultra-personalized, and we're moving in that direction. So basically what you see with recommendation engines, with YouTube and with Google, with Amazon, all of those kind of things, that is a clear-cut application of AI used for recommendations. So that's where the personalization already starts.
Sure.
But this is just the start of everything. As we instrument the world, as we instrument our bodies, as we instrument, if you think about the Internet of Things, we talk about even the intelligence of things. So every piece of equipment, a car, a house, everything will become more intelligent, effectively. And that means there's more data, there's more predictions. The predictions not only in the cloud, it's locally, it's on the edge. And so it's going to be massive in that regard. So if I look at AI applications, typically, even if you look at consumer-facing applications, you see AI on two levels. You see AI in a normal way where you're trying to do data mining, analytics, we do predictions, and things like that on the data. So that's almost like to get a 360-degree view of the consumer, of the customer, of the user. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening on the back. But then what we've seen as well, we see AI applications also in the human-computer interface. So it's basically plugged into the way we interact with computers. So in the past, still now, we need keyboards and we need mouses and so forth. But with the advancement of AI and specifically with deep learning and so forth, we're actually making it easier for humans to communicate with machines and with any systems effectively, because the natural language processing, the vision, the order, the sentiment analysis, all of those kind of things are being empowered by AI, machine learning, deep learning. And it's almost like the machines are getting smarter in that regard, and it makes it also possible to interact more naturally with that. So that is the one part of the world. Now, but there's another big part of the world. We talk about consumer-facing, but there's also the whole industrial manufacturing side.
Sure.
And with my previous AI company that I sold to General Electric, Seaton Systems, and also with Cortex Logic, we've done extensive work, especially in those kind of industries. And there, it's all about process optimization, equipment optimization, predictive maintenance, and so forth. So again, there it goes. It's all about the business value drivers. It's how can I get more throughput, yield, better quality material, and so you're saving costs. You're making the manufacturers, the mining industry much more productive, effective, and that holds for anything in the industrial space. And even if you think about pieces of equipment, incredible opportunity to say, let's optimize that piece of equipment so that because if that equipment is not running, we're not going to get throughput. We're not going to get things through our processes. So there's huge applications there. And obviously we've been instrumenting that world for a long time with sensors, temperature sensors and pressures and flows and so forth. And so there's huge applications on that front as well. Anyway, quite a bit that one can do on that front.
Very helpful in terms of giving us those dual dynamics there, Dr. Jacques Ludik.
Yes.
Dr. Ludik is the CEO of Cortex Logic and the author of Democratizing Artificial Intelligence to Benefit Everyone. We're also joined by Mishanda Naidu from LexisNexis, and he's a legal analyst and content editor there. Also joined by Sean Kruger, who is a technology and innovation specialist. Go visit our Twitter handle and we want to get your thoughts on the poll question that we're asking you. Is there a future for artificial intelligence or AI for the African continent? So far, we've got 80% of people who says yes, artificial intelligence is needed, and 0 who say no, it is a danger. 20% there on our Twitter handle at Channel Africa 1 are saying maybe if we do it right. Go to that Twitter handle. Just on our profile, you'll see I've pinned that particular poll question. At Channel Africa 1 is the handle. At Channel Africa 1 on Twitter is the handle. And contribute to this conversation as we unpack more around it. We know that AI is no longer a sci-fi movie concept, but it's really becoming a part of our everyday lives. This is our first part of our artificial intelligence. We'll continue the discussion with our guests after this break.
Welcome to this life-changing experience. We move a way of no return from 7 wonders of the world to the summit of Kilimanjaro. From the statue of Nelson Mandela to the African Renaissance Monument, we break all the boundaries. From the greatest archives of Timbuktu to the deepest oceans and rivers of Africa, we reveal the mysteries. We asking life's biggest questions. We rule the world of esoteric knowledge, from ancient Egypt to 4th Industrial Revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, Masterclass Africa, Sam Max, the Knowledge Premier.
25 minutes past 11 o'clock Central African time. You are listening to African Dialogue. This is our artificial intelligence series that we're starting today. We're looking at what artificial intelligence is and how does it look like on the African continent. We've spent a little bit of time in the start of our program unpacking what it is. I want us to move it forward, and I think Dr. Ludik created that space with that last response. And let me bring it to you, Sean, before I move back to Mishandran. In terms of where we are on the business front and the workplace, we know with the challenges of the coronavirus, technology has been very central in ensuring the survival of businesses and also how businesses operate and the workplace is set up. I know you work in this particular area. What have you observed happening, especially in the last year and a half?
All right, well, I'm glad you bring that up, Benjamin, because we first on customer, but look at, if you consider business-to-business transactions of artificial intelligence, we've made quite big movement in terms of automating transactions from a banking industry perspective. And if you look at healthcare as well, how we can track and trace data of the coronavirus within our healthcare systems to support and make certain decisions. But if you have to look at it from a day-to-day business side of things, I mean, I'm sure a lot of us have Zoom fatigue. But in the sense of what has also happened is the identification of areas that can be automated with artificial intelligence, because automation AI is quite strongly associated there. So within workplace environments currently, we're seeing more self-check-ins, tracking and routing being done using intelligence at the basis of data to help businesses not only reduce contact, but also automate areas to save costing. And I mean, that from an economic standpoint is not really a new concept, where when times are tough, I mean, as you can all imagine with the coronavirus and economic times, we're seeing areas that we need to improve cost efficiencies, productivity. And that's where we're seeing a lot more investment in artificial intelligence, not only I'm based in South Africa, but on an African level, where there's large investment levels to automate certain areas wherever possible. There was a study done, Benjamin, where in South Africa, up to 41% of certain job functionalities have the potential for automation. Now, that does make you think, all right, how does it change the workplace? Because if certain functions of your job can be essentially taken away, that creates quite a lot of fear, does it not? But what you need to look at it from the work perspective is what certain areas can be automated that's mundane and boring. You think about normal answering simple queries, hi, where's the bathroom, and those kind of things. Because that then allows in the workplace platform our human ingenuity to come to the forefront. Because people aren't then inundated with small, minor tasks, but rather they can start to focus on more intellectual and creativity thinking from an AI perspective, driving business investment within AI.
Absolutely. Let me bring Mishandran back into the conversation. Mishandran, what's your take in terms of, the pandemic and how it was almost timely that before the pandemic we were speaking about artificial intelligence, but it seems like it's accelerated during this particular period.
Oh, definitely so. With people working remotely and things like this, the work processes have become more automated and meetings, et cetera, things that employees usually have to spend a lot of time and manpower on are now being left in the hands of artificial intelligence. So really, it's just making businesses a lot more efficient. And if you're looking at Africa as a whole as well, last year being 2020, venture capitalists poured, I think, around $500 million into tech startups here in Africa. Google has also put a lot of money into a lot of development here in Africa. So we are seeing that there's a lot of investment going on as it is into this technology. In terms of the health front, since we were talking about the pandemic, I do most of my work with AI in the innovation field and also in the healthcare field. So we're seeing applications of AI really in healthcare and pharmaceuticals and being a huge, huge, huge business and something that Africa and South Africa in particular should really capitalize on. I mean, some of the applications include, like a faster and more accurate diagnoses of various ailments, improved personalized treatment. We're moving towards precision medicine, assisting with polypharmacology. So basically, when you have an illness, it's not just one issue that you have. It's multiplicity of issues that need to be treated with various different techniques and things. Drug repurposing, drug identification. The fact that in late 2020 there was a breakthrough that was discovered by DeepMind. Basically, it uncovered the 3D folding structures of proteins. This is important for vaccine research and drug discovery and how to treat any diseases going forward as well. In the innovation sphere, we're seeing a lot more development and a lot more talking about what's called creativity machines. So this is actually what my doctorate is on at the moment. It's basically an imagination machine that uses a deep-lying neural network that can create innovative and novel ideas, inventions essentially. And South Africa was actually the very first country in the world to grant a patent wherein an AI, being Davos, was listed as the inventor, the very first. In other countries like the US or in the UK and things like that, it was actually that patent application was denied because they said that AI could not qualify to be an inventor for the purposes of patent law. But really, going forward with with the insurgence of big data, we're looking more and more at AI to be our leading innovator. So there really is a lot of potential there.
And yeah, sure. Go ahead, Dr. Ludik, because I was going to come to you. Sure.
I just wanted to comment on Sean, specifically Nishandran there as well. I agree fully. I think AI is just a proxy. It's just, remember that it is just a proxy for smart technology. There's a bunch of other smart technologies. We see disruption.
Can you explain for us what that actually means?
Sorry, say again?
Can you explain what that definition means?
No. I was just saying that AI is just part of the smart technology stack, and we see digitalization happening at scale here as well. And basically with the pandemic, just to quickly give an example, I think Nishandran talked about some healthcare examples. Now, we specifically from a Cortex Logic side, Cortex Group side, we actually have specific applications in healthcare. And I think it's an incredible opportunity to democratize digital healthcare. And there's obviously the same with education. And I think those two are very big application areas, especially in Africa, but I think worldwide. The specific things that we're doing, just to give an example, we just launched with Naspers Media 24. You will see it in the news a lot more at scale, These Teens, which is a personal digital wellness companion for teenagers and helping them on a mental health side. And it's got its own AI assistant. It's got discovery of any type of things that you want to talk about, but it's also connected with therapists, with counselors. So 24/7, you've got human-led support systems, but you also have 24/7 AI assistant that you can talk to. You get almost like in Instagram, you get your stories, you get discoveries, all of those kind of things. Everything's embedded. And then as you interact with the app, we've got a VIV token, a cryptocurrency that incentivizes people as well. So that's an example of where we not only use AI, we've got recommendation engines built in there, but there's cryptocurrency, there's blockchain, there is the human side of things. So we bring in human-led support systems. You've got that whole combination, bundle, packaged together to provide a digital solution. And we've done the same with Journey Wellness. So there, we're looking holistically at your wellness. Not only, first of all, we're connecting to your wearables, or you're connecting to any data that you provide, even if you just manually fill it in, or say health assessment data, or your claims data, or any of those kind of things. And then we can provide you with a holistic analysis. And then we've got mental health, as well as fitness, exercise, financial wellness. We all bring it together holistically. And all of that is a digital, ultra-personalized, AI-enabled wellness companion. So those are examples of things that one can do, and there's an incredible uptake for that, an incredible need that can be addressed. So for me, my massive transformative purpose and that of my businesses is how can we use smart technology to actually shape a better future. So this is for me exactly and my book is also about this, democratizing AI to benefit everyone, and how can we use smart technology to create a better future.
Fascinating examples there from you, Dr. Ludik. But it takes me back to this big big challenge for the African continent. And maybe let me come to you, Sean, in terms of you expanding on that, because Africa has multiple challenges when it comes to the access of the internet. We have these problems of shortage of electricity, backlog in infrastructure in some countries. How do you think artificial intelligence can help us deal with developmental issues on the African continent?
Thank you for that, Benjamin. I think Dr. Ludik also attached something important there, that AI doesn't sit in isolation.
Sure.
It's not just one technology that works all by itself. I mean, you think about, and this leads on to my addressing the question, is what about robotics? Because artificial intelligence often manifests itself in a physical form through robotics. And I think that's where Africa has a very good opportunity to leapfrog using these technologies to advance and leverage what we have, and that's natural resources. I mean, if you look at Africa in terms of two biggest industries, mining and agriculture, from a mining perspective, what is our biggest challenge currently? It's danger to the workers. I mean, we have the biggest, deepest mines in the world, and it's amazing, but our people go down there. And I think in that sense, from an AI and robotics perspective, there's areas where we can automate certain functionalities to take that danger away or at least minimize it. And from an agriculture perspective, you know, it's not necessarily what we can do, but it's what we are doing currently, and it's quite amazing to see. From using machine learning, image-based recognition of crops, you know, when to water it, how to do it, how to do predictive analysis on what soil and what fertilizers to use, to even disease identification on the ground by farmers. There's quite a lot of research undergoing in AI, and I'm not allowed to say which area, but it identifies certain fruits and vegetable diseases just by taking a picture of the fruit. So the farmer, who's not necessarily an expert in genetics and disease of certain vegetables, he can take a photo and can say, Mr. Farmer, process A, B, and C to actually address this issue. So it's not that what we could do, it's what we are doing that's quite impressive on the African continent.
Well, that is the voice of Sean Kruger, Technology and Innovation Specialist. And you also heard Dr. Jacques Ludik, who is the CEO of Cortex Logic and author of Democratizing Artificial Intelligence to Benefit Everyone. And I'll come to you, Mashendran. That's Mashendran Naidu from LexisNexis Legal Analysis. And he's also a content editor there. Our poll is moving slowly but surely on Twitter. Do check it out, and maybe it's just a click that you can give us your thoughts on this subject matter. Is there a future for artificial intelligence for the African continent? Is the question we're asking there on that Channel Africa Twitter handle. Is there a future for artificial intelligence or AI for the African continent? Yes, it is needed. People are saying that, and it's only 88.3% of people who see an importance of artificial intelligence on the continent. Not anyone is saying it's a danger. That's a very interesting thought there. And 16.7% of you say maybe if we do it right. Mashendran, we're about to wrap up the program, and I'd like us to really unpack how the future looks like in terms of artificial intelligence, specifically for the continent. Are we innovative enough? Are we pioneering enough? Listening to Dr. Jacques Ludik and Sean, it seems like that we are actually doing things on the African continent that are spearheading some innovations.
Definitely so. I mean, we have some of the brightest minds in the world in the country here at the moment. I mean, in my very own province in KZN, we have people like MIIA Abbas or Francesco Petrioni who are partnering with IBM in, you know, the next step of artificial intelligence being quantum AI. So that's an even more efficient and more powerful form of AI. So we definitely are taking steps in the right direction and addressing some of the issues that we have in the country, for example, in the agriculture sector. But there's a lot more that we can do, and we have the legal frameworks in place at the moment. I mean, we've got MIIA that has come into force. We've got the National Cloud Economic Policy that forms part of the ECTEA Act. All of these things are really setting the structures and the frameworks for using AI in going forward in the future to really solve some of the issues that we have here in this country. And of course, if you're looking at Africa as a whole, many of the countries in Africa have started putting in place these kinds of frameworks in order to really create this enabling environment to use this technology in various sectors and various different uses.
Dr. Ludik, as we wrap it up, the future of AI in Africa?
I think it's unbelievable, but it's what we're going to do with that. So for me, even in those questions that you've got for the audience, it's imperative for us to use smart technology in a smart way. AI is going to be part of that, even if we like it or not. It's going to be incredibly important because as we instrument the world, if we generate more data, there's going to be more opportunities, and we have to leapfrog. We have to make use of that. And what I would say is, you talk about shortages and challenges and stuff. I would prioritize getting the infrastructure in place so that we can make sure that as many people as possible can be educated with smart technology, but in general, just education in general.
So what do we need to prioritize as Africa when it comes to that infrastructure, Doctor, just briefly?
Yeah, I would. I've got a specific vision also for the future. I want to briefly talk about that as well in terms of, and I do talk about this in the book quite a bit and elaborately. But anyway, in terms of addressing it, I would say I would spend money. I would prioritize investment into making sure that educational, almost like if you look at internet service providers, making sure that any educational content can be made almost for free, could be subsidized by governments. And we put the infrastructure in place, make sure that we can, at scale, empower, educate people as much as possible on all different fronts. But I think that's just one part of the solution. I think there needs to be a re-engineering of our whole economic system, social governance system. I'm arguing for a more decentralized world. I think it needs to be a balance. There's going to be some central things.
Sure.
And I'm talking about that in the book specifically, where we can actually turn technology on its head, where you actually make sure that you can actually give every person or every community or every business an AI assistant so that their data and services can be monetized. So we need to create a decentralized world where we enable that. And I talk about sapiens.network and a bunch of things like that. There's a lot of interesting ideas.
Sure.
But the future for AI in Africa, I think it looks bright if we operate wisely, ethically, and we do the right things.
Okay, let's bring Sean back into the conversation. Sean, your take. And, I don't know if you're an expert in this, but when it comes to service delivery and, good governance, those are key issues on the African continent. Do you think AI can play a factor there in terms of the future?
Well, at the end of the day, it's people who code these systems, Benjamin, and I think that's what it comes down to is we who are developing these things are setting the standard for the future. And we do have other technologies that link with artificial intelligence. Dr. has also mentioned this. Like I've said, AI doesn't sit in isolation. But we have blockchain technologies where there's complete transparency. And that is ultimately what can root out corruption in certain areas, that hampers innovation in that sense. So we can do so. But there are so many gray areas with this. Because at the end of the day, once we let a system start to think for itself, who's responsible for the outcomes and what it does? So I think in that sense, we need to be very careful of what we do and how we program these things. But considering the benefits of what it can do from a transparency and accountability side, I think there's definitely room where it needs to be implemented to set out and to drive African innovation.
Well, thank you so much, James, for giving us your time. Thank you to Sean Kruger, Technology and Innovation Specialist. Thank you as well to Mishandran Naidu from LexisNexis. And Mishandran is a legal analyst and content editor there. Finally, but not least, thank you to Dr. Jacques Ludik, who is the CEO of Cortex Logic. He has a book that he has been punting a lot this hour. Let's check it out. Democratizing Artificial Intelligence to Benefit Everyone. Democratizing artificial intelligence to benefit everyone. This is our first series. We'll continue in the next 2 months, every second week, to really unpack more of what artificial intelligence is. This was a great start, gents. You really assisted us as Channel Africa to pick this particular theme off on a good and very vibrant note. So we really appreciate your participation.
African Dialogue, looking at different events in depth, discussing a variety of issues.
What we see here is a clear violation of, one, the rights to privacy of Tiwonge and Stephen.
The position of Greenpeace is that it's been a disappointing meeting.